how can you build a content library in just 30 minutes a day? What are the best ways to talk about your client work in your content? And how do you get people as excited as you are about your niche? Well, you're about to find out. Welcome to the Clients from Content podcast. My guest today is Maigen Thomas. Maigen helps designers and small businesses build inclusive, accessible websites that actually get results. She runs Level 11 Technology, teaches practical UX and accessibility through live workshops, and wrote the book Practical UX. You can find her sharing real world strategies and spicy UX takes on LinkedIn or breaking down accessibility issues on YouTube. She's also a member of my Clients from Content program, which is awesome. We've talked a lot. I'm thrilled to have her on the show. Hello, Maigen, and welcome.
Hello, I'm so excited to be here. Everything sounds so much nicer when you introduce it. Can you come do that every time I need to go somewhere?
No problem at all. I assure you it's all you. It's all things you've done. And you got great questions that I'm happy to talk to you about, and I know lots of people are going to be interested in and hopefully find valuable. So, let's jump right into it. What is the first thing that you want to know?
My first burning question is really something that has been on my mind for a while because, like everybody else, I'm busy. I got life, I got stuff, and then there's all the things that pop up that I didn't plan for. So, if I only had to pare it down, if I could only do 30 minutes a day for like the next 30 days building up my content library, how should I spend that time?
It's funny because I'm sure there are people listening to this that are like 30 minutes a day. How could you have 30 minutes a day? They're already jealous. They're right. You're like, if I could barely carve out 30 minutes a day, people are like, 30 minutes a week. How about then? What do I do?
Totally.
But we'll pretend that we all have sort of 30 minutes a day
Well,
to
I'm
do
putting it
this.
on like
So
a parameters on like the 30 days. So if I can carve
yeah.
out 30 days of 30 minutes, that means that I can ease back into 30 minutes a week for the next few weeks.
Yeah, I love it. And the good news is it is absolutely possible. I do think that a lot of times people, their struggle or their challenge or the overwhelm they feel with content is because they think they need more time than they actually do to do it. And they don't realize that you're creating content all the time. I've talked about this before, but like your inbox, your sent emails is all content. Every conversation you have with someone is content. You just don't realize, hey, I could take that email that I just sent, take a snippet of it, copy and paste it, and boom, there's a post. So, one
Really?
of the secrets to this in terms of creating content in a limited amount of time is understanding that everything you're doing is content, as opposed to, oh, I need to sit down and quote unquote create this new thing. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I think before we get into sort of content library, it's probably helpful for me to define the term because you've been in my world for a while. I talk about it a lot, but there are probably people who are like, what is he even talking about? So I think when I say content library, essentially what I mean is it's a collection of content that has been proven to work, proven to be effective so that you can use it over and over again. So this is the other thing that makes the time you put into it that you are able to shrink it over time. Because in theory, as you're publishing content, whether that be on LinkedIn or videos or podcasts or whatever it is, the stuff that works, you should be able to reuse and repackage pretty regularly. It depends on the platform, but generally speaking, anything you post anywhere, you could probably post again 3 months later and no one is going to complain. The reason why it's not going to be an issue is because number one, most people didn't see it the first time because only 10% of your followers probably saw it. Number two,
That's
you
fair.
probably have some new audience coming in all the time. So they didn't see the thing you posted a month ago, 3 months ago,
That's true.
whatever. And the other thing is even if they did see it, they don't remember it. They just don't. And as someone who repurposes a lot of my own content, I don't remember half the time the stuff that I have posted. So like I'll go back and find something in my archives and be like, "Oh, I'm going to reshare this." And I literally when I find it I'm like, "I don't remember creating that at all." So if
I
I
think
don't
I was a
remember it,
genius.
right, I'm like, if I don't remember it, there's no way that they remember it. The other thing is when a piece of content performs well once, it will perform well almost every other time after. So, with that in mind, and this is not a hard and fast rule, but if you approach it as, hey, I'm looking to build a library of content that works. I'm going to reshare it every 3 months, every 6 months. You pick whatever you want, but let's just say hypothetically every 3 months. That would mean in a hypothetical world that if you published every single day, which you don't necessarily have to, but if you published every single day and you got to the point where you had 90 pieces of content that worked, you would never have to create anything new because you would just go through the same 90 thing. Now you could create new stuff, but you wouldn't have to create new stuff. So even if you got a third of the way there, even if you got 30 pieces of content that worked, whatever, and if you were posting every day, you've now removed a third of that work of creating new stuff. So you can see how over time you can build this library that not only makes content creation much easier for you and much less time consuming, also you're resharing stuff that you know works. So what you get out of it is going to be better, and that's going to have all sorts of positive benefits over time. So we've talked about what a content library is. I also think it's important to define what it means for content to work or to be effective, right? So in my mind, for content to be effective, it needs to be aligned with your goal and
Mhm.
your target audience's goal. It's
Okay.
not about, oh, this got X number of likes or X number of views or comments or whatever. That might be a part of it, depending on your goals. It certainly helps, but that's not actually, in most cases, what you are optimizing for. So to me, you need to be understand like I'm creating content to accomplish something specific, right? To get clients, to get leads, to make an impact, to there's a whole bunch of things that you could reasons you could be doing it, but you want to understand why you're doing it and then measure effectiveness based on that, right? You don't want to get distracted by what are really the platform's goals, which are reach, likes, followers, other vanity metrics. If your goal is clients and one post gets you 100 likes but no client leads, and another post gets you 5 likes but 2 client leads, the one with less likes is actually the more effective piece of content,
It's more
right? So
valuable.
understanding as you're trying to build this library, I'll give you a perfect example. The biggest thing that I've in terms of reach and likes and whatever, I think my biggest post in the last month on LinkedIn was I shared a postcard that I had written when I was like 9 years old and at overnight camp and sent to my mom. And basically it was like, they're making me do this. I'm fine. I'm alive. Have fun, whatever. It's very funny. Not surprisingly, people loved it. It did really well. It has a lot of ancillary benefits to me, probably in terms of, okay, I seem human and whatever, right? And maybe it exposed new people to my world. That's a good post. I'll probably repost it again at some point because it did do really well and got bunch of reach. That's not getting me business. So that's an example where people fall into this trap of they're like, oh, the stuff that gets me the most reach, the most likes, whatever is the most effective. Not really if your goal is to get business. So that stuff needs to be aligned. So
That's
as
a
you go
helpful
down this sort
distinction
of,
for me.
yeah, as you go down this build the content library goal, you want to keep that in mind to make sure that you're, building it with the right pieces of content. So let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
How, with that in mind, as you start doing this, how have you up to this point, or how will you moving forward measure the effectiveness of your content?
Oh, that's okay. That's a hard question. It's not a hard question given the
Mhm.
information you just gave me. I suddenly find myself going, oh, I think I would have first gone back and looked at like the best engagement posts on
Mhm.
LinkedIn, but that's actually not the right way to look at it. So I actually need to take a look at how have I gotten my last few clients
Mhm.
and maybe what brought them in and maybe amplify that a little bit. And I don't necessarily know that it was a post, but it was something I said. It was something I talked about. It was obviously something
Yep.
engaging enough for them to go, hey, we should talk because I do like website
Yep.
consulting essentially. So finding what that is and
Yeah.
making a post out of it. And that almost feels like it gives me a little bit of anxiety. I'm not going to
Mhm.
lie. I've got a little bit of do I know how to re-say what I said then? Because it was probably something off the cuff and, "Oh,
Mhm.
blah, 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 I do website stuff, and sure, we should totally talk. You're
Right.
probably missing out on 15% of your market, and you don't even know it." But
Right.
that wasn't necessarily a perfectly edited little post
Mhm.
with an accompanying picture that got posted to LinkedIn.
Here's the other thing to keep in mind with this, right? Because sometimes when I talk about this, people go almost too far the other direction, right? Where they're like, I posted this thing and it didn't get me a client, so I guess it wasn't effective. It's a little more nuanced than that. So, for example, and I'll talk about some of what you said there as well. So, you might realize that, okay, most of my clients come from conversations and relationships that I have with people. It almost doesn't matter what I post. No one's going to suddenly be like, okay, I'm in. So you might go a step before that and go, well, one of the goals of my content is to get one on one conversations started. It doesn't have to be about hiring me, but how can I do things that lead people to direct message me or reply to me or that are steps towards a one on one conversation? Because I know that ultimately helps lead to clients. That's like an example where it's okay. Yeah, the post didn't necessarily have someone contact me and go, "Oh, I want to hire you." But
Because of
it
this
did start a
post.
conversation with somebody that leads to something is a step in that direction, right? And then you can start to optimize your content for things that will spark conversations. Another example of this will get very meta, but this podcast right here. I do not get hundreds of thousands of downloads of this podcast anywhere close to it. I have a 30,000 subscriber newsletter, and the typical episode of this podcast maybe gets 1,000 downloads. It is a tiny fraction of my overall audience. But most people who join my membership reference to me in some way, I'm a big fan of your podcast, and oftentimes unprovoked. So when I'll be like, oh, thanks for joining, excited to work with you, blah, blah, blah. A lot of times they'll be like, oh, I love your podcast. I listen to it all the time. It way over indexes. Yes, a lot of
Oh,
them read my
interesting.
newsletter, but I've realized that, oh, a lot of my buyers are listening to this podcast. So therefore, I know that as I'm thinking about it, like this podcast is helping me get clients, even if it's not growing my audience, it's helping in some way that I can't necessarily measure in a hard metric. I mean, I guess I could, but if I surveyed people or whatever, but I know this is helping in that way. The opposite would be true too. If I was like the people that are buying never mention the podcast, I might start to go, well, maybe it's not doing that. And by the way, there's other directions this podcast is designed to do that. So I could go other directions with this podcast that would maybe bring in a larger audience, but not members and not clients. Right. So
Mm.
there's different ways that this connects. It's not as simple as I posted a piece of content and the person hired me. It's a little more nuanced than that. And so that's also important to keep in mind as you're measuring effectiveness.
So maybe to answer your question, it's I should look at what posts have gotten the kind of engagement that I'm looking for, which is
Mhm.
people who are likely to, for me, it's an early career designer who is interested in buying the book, or
Mhm.
it's a small business, a small organization that is typically well under $1 million in revenue a year, but has a website that they know is not quite effective. So people who might be interested in that, I should take a look back at, regardless of the performance of them based on social media metrics, but which ones drove people to reach out and do
Yeah,
more
and
of them.
also who are those people? And that's the nice thing
Yeah.
about something like LinkedIn. Like you can go, okay, who are the people that like this post? What do they
Mhm.
do? Who are the people
Yeah.
that like this post? What do they do? And if there's a difference, that becomes really interesting because you can go, well, why is it that this post seemed to resonate with this type of person and this post seemed to resonate with this type of person? And which type of person do I really want to reach? And again, even just a little bit of strategic approach in there will shift how you're doing and ultimately help you get what you want to get. A few other general notes, and I'm going to get to what you do in 30 minutes a day in just a second. A few other general notes about setting out to build a content library. So, number one, it's fine to use multiple platforms. My advice in general, especially if you have limited time, is to focus primarily on one.
Okay.
So, if you're going to use 30 minutes a day, I would be like, okay, let's focus on, yes, you can do other stuff, but like for the sake of this, like I'm going to build a library on LinkedIn or whatever, just to focus your efforts because every platform's sort of a little different. The other thing and by the way, you can still repurpose that stuff on other platforms, but I just think to focus your work to get the most out of it. Another thing is be realistic about how much content you need. You probably don't need to post every day. You certainly don't on LinkedIn. So just because you're going to spend 30 minutes a day for 30 days doesn't mean you have to do 30 posts.
Okay.
So I think that's really helpful to understand. Let's say it was LinkedIn, you might go, I'm going to post 3 times a week, and that's probably fine. I would post at least once a week, but probably 3 would be fine. So now you have 30 minutes a day over the course of 7 days, if you're counting the weekends, to come up with 3 posts. Very doable. The next thing I would say is I do think when possible, creating, quote unquote, creating, even if you're not publishing, but creating every day, working on this every day, even if you just do weekdays, I think is very helpful. I think people get into trouble when they're like, oh, I'll just do it one day a week or here or there or whatever. Especially when you're trying to have a focused effort and build this out. I do think if you can do even a little bit of time every day is helpful. I'm going to get more into this in a second, but ask your existing audience what they want to know. They will tell you, and especially the people that are the perfect fit for whatever, right? What questions do they have? What do they want to know? What would they like to see you talk about? What are they trying to figure out? What problems do they have? You can talk to them one on one individually. You can ask them collectively. You can do polls. You can do surveys. You can whatever. But a lot of people forget that they could just easily tap into the people that they have. And even if you have conversations with 3 people, let's say, you'll learn a ton as long as they're the right people. The other thing to keep in mind is that this is an iterative process. So you're just trying to take your best shot, put it out there, see what works, learn as you go. It will get easier and get better as you go. And then along those lines, when you're building a content library, you are mining for gold. It doesn't matter if most of what you create doesn't work. So what you're looking for is not every post is going to be a hit. What you're looking for is if I put out 5 posts, does one of them really work? Because that's all that
Okay.
matters. Is one of them good enough that I can put it in my library and use it again in 3 months? And eventually you'll get there. And also the ones that work, which I'll also talk about in a second, you're going to learn from, you're going to iteratively get better and better. But it's really important from a mindset perspective to understand that I'm throwing a bunch of stuff out there looking for the gold. And I don't care. I know most of it's not going to be gold. It can't be. Right. I forget where I saw this. And this I'm going to butcher. This isn't the exact quote, but someone was essentially saying, if everything was a hit, then they wouldn't be hits. They would be average.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like by definition, you can only have a hit if most things are not hits. So reminding yourself of that, I think, is very important and helpful. And then
Okay.
as you're going to track this in whatever way you choose to, and I think also people can go overboard here. You don't need some crazy spreadsheet, whatever. You're going to track performance. But the truth is, you really only need to track the winners. The losers don't matter. And I think
Okay.
that's another thing, even psychologically, to reinforce to yourself. You could, as simple as having a Google Doc, a spreadsheet, or whatever, and go, when something hits, I put it in there. And when it doesn't hit, I don't care. I'm not tracking it. I don't care how it performs. All I need is the winners, and they're going in my library.
Okay.
And
That's actually helpful. Just
right. Will
keep it
save you the
simple.
time. Yes, you can look and analyze. And look, some people like to analyze every little thing and why didn't this work and whatever. But the truth is, it doesn't really matter why it didn't work. The truth is, the only thing that matters, the only thing you're going to reuse is the winners. So you can save yourself, especially when you have limited time. You can save a lot of time by not having to invest all that time tracking every single little thing that you do, and just go, when something hits, I'm going to put a link to it in this document and go back and use it again. Okay, so that's a lot of backstory on content library. If I had 30 minutes a day for 30 days to build a content library, here's exactly what I would do. The first thing I would do is I would make a list of questions to answer in my content. I would think about who my ideal audience is. I would think about every question that they possibly have, maybe even ask them what they want to know. My answers to every one of those questions is an individual piece. Super easy way to get started. The second thing I would do is I would analyze what's worked for me in the past. So, assuming you posted stuff before, I would go through that and I would say what has done the best for me. And what I'm looking for there is I'm looking for, of the stuff that worked, maybe it resonated because of the topic. Maybe it was a format that I used that worked well. I'm basically hypothesizing, here's what worked and here's why I think it may have worked, right? And alternatively, if you don't have that or can't find stuff that worked, study what's worked for other people in your niche, right? Go find someone who's reaching your audience. Go look at all their stuff and see which of their things work the best and try to guess why. This topic, this format, this whatever. So you should be able to come. So now you're 2 steps in and you've come away with, number one, a list of questions that you're going to answer in content. And number two, formats and topics that have proven to work for you in the past or for other people who reach a similar audience. The third thing I would do is I would identify or create templatized formats I can use for content. So what I mean by this is, if it's visual, you could obviously have templates, whatever. But even in terms of written stuff, right? Oh, this post started with this kind of controversial opinion, and then I told a story, and then I gave a how to do the thing with 3 bullet points. If you look at anything that works and go, if I were to extract this as a template and then do it for another topic or do it for another thing, you're looking for a few of those that you can use, right? And you should be able to come up with them. And again, all you have to do is look at something that worked before for you or someone else and try to pull the underlying format and go, okay, I'm going to try this again with something else. Maybe it'll work, maybe it won't, but it gives you a sort of starting point to try. A few templates that I've used, and again, this can be social posts, this can be blog posts, this can be videos, it can be whatever, there's a million different ways, but here are few things that I stumbled upon, right? I did a series of blog posts. Again, it started as one, it worked really well. And then I did a bunch more that I called 41 sentence tips. So the first one, I don't remember the topic, but it was like 41 sentence tips about newsletters. And I literally write 41 sentence tips. And I was like, oh, that worked really well. So then I was like 41 sentence tips about sales, 41 sentence tips about communication. And every few months I would do a new one. And it gave me a framework that was like, oh, this is easy. I know what this is. I just have to pick a topic and then do it. And they worked well all the time. Another example on social is I will do what I call free coaching time posts, which every time the format is very simple. I just at the top, I go free coaching time. And then I'll have some sort of prompt or question that it will be usually some version of, do you want me to review your newsletter? Reply with your newsletter sign up page. I'll review it and give you a tip to improve it. That's a format. So I could then the next time go reply with your website and I'll look at your homepage and give you a tip to whatever. Very easy, right? Those didn't start as, oh, I'm going to do a million of these. It started as one post. The post worked. And I was like, okay, I could do this with other topics and this format works. So you want to identify some of those. And then the fourth thing I do, because all those first three things are going to make your 30 minutes a day for 30 days easier, right? Because now you like know what you're doing, you know what works, you have time, it gets faster and easier and more likely to succeed. So the fourth thing is like actually doing it. And here's how I would spend my 30 minutes a day. I think I would spend 10 minutes a day on what I would call ideation and analysis. So a combination of coming up with ideas for stuff and analyzing what you posted before. Why did that work? Especially the ones that work. Why did that work? Is there something that can be learned on this? Should I do more on that topic? Should I, whatever. So about 10 minutes a day on that. And then the other 20 minutes a day on what I would call creation. So writing the posts, that kind of stuff, right? Now, you'll notice I'm not referencing engagement here because your question is about creating a content library. That doesn't mean engagement is not important. So I'm counting that as separate from your 30 minutes a day of content library building time. If you don't have separate time, and by the way, it doesn't need to be a lot. It could be like 10 minutes engaging, whatever. If you don't have that, then I would maybe probably just alternate between the 10 minutes a day on ideation analysis one day. The next day, that 10 minutes becomes engagement, or, you incorporate it into your 30 minutes in some way and figure that out. And again, this is where it also depends how often are you posting and all that kind of stuff. So I just want to reference that because it's not that engagement is not important. It certainly is. So to wrap that up, if I had 30 minutes a day, first thing I do, make a list of questions to answer. Second thing, analyze what's worked in the past. Third is identify and create templatized formats I can use over and over again. The fourth is spend my 30 minutes a day doing 10 minutes on ideation and analysis, 20 minutes a day on creation. Do that for 30 days, track the hits, track the winners, repurpose those every 3 months, and you will be on your way. How does that all sound and feel? Any questions about any of that?
It sounds doable is the part that I'm excited about, and it actually gives me a plan for, okay, if I only have, say, a 15-minute block, I can schedule 15 minutes, go take a look at 10, 20 posts and see, did that lead to any conversations? What did people take away from that? And I can do this incrementally as opposed to feeling overwhelmed by trying to sit down and build Rome in a day,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah,
So this actually
exactly.
feels very actionable, as does the 41 sentence tips. Like, I might steal that from you. I don't know that I have 40, but
Yeah,
like
40 was a
about
random 40
accessibility
was
of
a random
headlines.
number, by the way. By the way, here's another side note. So again, I didn't set out to do this, but it's another example of repurposing content. So 40 was a random number. The first one might have even been 20, I don't know. But what I realized after I published it was it worked really well. I also realized because they were one sentence thing, I was very active on Twitter at the time. So I
Mhm.
realized I also just wrote 40 tweets
You did.
because each one of them could be used individually. So that's the other thing that is interesting. And at the time, I was also pretty active on Medium, and Medium had an interesting thing where people could like highlight or applaud individual lines in a post. So what that
Yeah.
would show me from an analysis standpoint is
What
I could
resonated
see
with
which of
who?
the 41s resonated the most. And I go, okay, I'm going to do more about that or more about that or repurpose that or whatever. So it's a good format because it's flexible. And by the way, I chose one sentence, but that could be done in a variety of different ways. Anyway, yeah, it's a good
Uh,
it's a good format.
That's a really
Uh,
good format. And then like
or
the one where you're like open office hours or like
yeah,
free
the free
free
coaching
coaching.
time
I
always
could
works well.
totally do that for
Yep.
folks because I can point out one thing on your
Yep.
portfolio that you need to improve the accessibility of or one thing on your
Yep.
website. So,
And by
yeah,
the way, those
it's
posts, those free coaching posts also get great engagement. They get good reach because everyone's leaving comments saying, review my
yeah,
thing, which
I
then
love
boosts it in
that.
the algorithm. And,
Yes.
and by the way, there's another thing there. If you're in a sort of expertise based business, it's a showcase for your expertise. So it does lead to clients. Some of those you can then lead into bigger conversation. Hey, you should do this page. And by the way, if you want to talk about how to do that, we can talk about that. And the other thing I love about those free coaching posts is even the people that don't reply are reading all the replies. So the lurkers are
Oh,
like,
we're all pooping
wow,
on
she
it.
gave that person a great tip and that person a great tip. It's a great showcase for your expertise as opposed to a post where you're just like talking about one thing. Now they're like, whoa, that was what he said to that person was great. And that person and that person. And I wonder what he would say to me. They're really powerful posts.
Oof, I
Um,
am definitely gonna borrow that. Yeah.
yeah, please do. Okay, so before we get to your next question, just a quick side note here. If you're listening to this, I assume it's because you want to get more clients from your content. I can help you do that. My Clients from Content membership teaches you how to get more clients and sales from your social posts, newsletter, podcast, blog posts, and videos. To help more than 500 members use content to earn millions of dollars in revenue. You can check it out at joshspector.com/program. All right, Megan, let's get to your next question. What's the next thing you want to know?
Okay, so the next thing sounds pretty simple, but I also work in an interesting kind of part of website design. So, my question is, what are the best ways that I can talk about client work in my content? And the context for this question is I do a lot of website evaluations that surface accessibility issues that could become a legal problem for those organizations. So, I keep most of my best content behind my Patreon paywall because it is exposing vulnerabilities for I don't want to get a cease and desist letter while I'm
Mhm.
teaching people how to find accessibility issues, but they are really important. So like how do I balance this desire to share this high quality knowledge that I know I have but without exposing this company that I have no actual relationship with to any sort of outcome?
Okay. So first, I'm going to talk a little bit about that sort of thing that's very specific to you, a very sort of specific challenge, and then I'm going to, in general, talk about how to reference client work more in your content. So the first thing is you can talk about anything as long as you don't specifically name them. So, for example, if your client, I don't know why I'm going to say McDonald's, but if your client was McDonald's and you were like, wow, McDonald's has a lot of accessibility issues and this is a disaster and I would love to talk about it, but I can't. You can say, I'm working with a fast food chain. You can say, I'm working with a restaurant. You can say,
Mhm.
I'm working with a global brand. You
Mhm.
can say, I'm working with one of the top 10 brands in the world. You can say any of those things. You just can't say McDonald's.
Okay.
And you can say their website has X, Y, and Z problem. You just can't say McDonald's website has X, Y, and Z problem.
Okay.
So the first thing is you can talk about any client, anyone you work with anonymously, as long as you don't specifically name them. And if you do that, well, go ahead. Maybe that's not true.
No,
You
I'm
tell.
like, no, I'm like, because they're also not clients yet. Wouldn't that be nice? But they're not clients. They're just people like, because I evaluate websites across
Mhm.
all different industries and I
Yeah.
teach people by using real websites. So I
Mhm.
don't have their permission, but their website is also a public domain. So
Yeah.
I don't need their permission to look at it. But I don't want to put them in a position of vulnerability well, actually, I'm like,
Yeah.
what do you mean without? Yeah, I don't want to put them in the position of
You just
vulnerability.
you just don't you just don't name them.
Okay.
But but
Really?
my
I'm
but
allowed?
my but my advice to you would so I would do 2 things in that scenario, right? If they're not so let's say you're like, I'm gonna just check out McDonald's website and I saw all these problems. And I would like McDonald's to hire me, whatever. You write it anonymously. Again, I do think when you do it anonymously, you want to give as much detail as you feel like you can give. So that's why I would say a fast food chain, a global brand, a whatever, versus I was looking at a company's website and, blah, blah. That's too vague. You want to
Okay.
try to give some context.
Okay.
But let's use this McDonald's example, right? So let's say I was reviewing a major fast food chain's website And here's all the problems that I saw and all the issues, and they probably don't even realize it. Then what I would do, let's say you wanted McDonald's as a client, I would try to track someone down there, easier said than done, but you try to track someone down there. I would send them the post and I would be like, hey, FYI, this is you guys. Just thought you should know. And if you want help, I'm happy to help. But even if you don't, you're going to fix it on your own. You guys should know you have this issue. The other thing that I would
Oh,
do is I would send it to every other fast food chain. And I would say, this isn't you guys, but I haven't reviewed your site. And maybe it is.
Josh.
It's one of your competitors. Happy to take a look at your site if you'd like me to.
Oh my gosh, that's genius. You know what you just did for me is help me realize that I actually have a boatload more content than I
Mhm.
realize. Now that I can actually speak about it, now that you've given me
Right,
this permission to speak about it, I have oodles and oodles and oodles. Do we
right.
still use that term? Of content. And I actually can get clients from that content.
Yep,
Literally, I'm going to
yep.
do this
Good,
week.
good. And that's why also you want to say fast food restaurant as opposed to
Mhm,
general company, right?
mhm.
Because because so you can go to the other ones and be like, hey, this is specifically about like your niche. And obviously you can do that in any niche you want. You go, I want clients that are this kind of business, this kind of company, this kind of whatever, government websites, whatever it is that you decide that you want to do. You do one semi-anonymous, send it to them, and then send it to everyone else in that space. This is also a great example of what we were talking about before when I was saying measuring the effectiveness of content. That post could get you 0 likes, could get 0 traction, but it's
Mhm.
given you an excuse to email every fast food restaurant
And not feel icky about it.
and
Know that
not
the other business
right,
owners like me are like,
right,
"Well, I know I'm really good at what I do,
right.
but I want them to come to me, that if you build it, they will come mentality. I'm trying to get myself around. No, 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 no. I can go to you and just be like, "Hey."
And by the way, here's the other thing that happens. If it does get a little bit of traction, it doesn't even have to be a lot. Let's say 2 people comment on that and go, I go to this fast food website all the time and it drives me crazy. Well, guess what happens? When you send it to them, you go, and oh, by the way, you see that person that
That's real
commented this?
customer sentiment,
Right.
which
Look
is
at how they feel about their experience of whatever. So that's what I mean by strategic content. And like, you're using it to again, their value can be created in a variety of different ways. And that's an example where it doesn't matter how many likes or reach or whatever you get. It's just a
right.
place for you to put a thing, which then creates an opportunity for you to go reach out to people. And it's also an example of what I talked about before of like templatized formats. And you're like, I can do this for any niche, any business, anything that I want to
Yeah.
do. And again, it doesn't matter. Is it more powerful if you say McDonald's? Sure. Does it matter? Not really.
Not the
So you
way
don't lose
you've
anything by
couched
not,
it. No,
you
I'm
don't
not
lose
losing
anything.
anything. In fact, I'm gaining the cachet of
Yeah.
mentioning but not mentioning, doing a
And by the way,
subtweet
if you really want, you could
situation.
at the bottom, anyone would go, I can't tell you which site it is, but anyone want to guess? And
And
then
then they start
then you get
tagging them.
comments and engagement and whatever. So it's you can combine these things and it gets interesting. So other things where let's say you can reference the clients and you want to leverage people you've worked with, because I think that's another big piece of this too, where it's like you have testimonials, you have experience, you've done things, and like how do I incorporate that in the content in a better way than what most people do, which is just look at the testimonial I got. And everyone's like, who cares? Whatever. And that's a key thing here, right? Don't just post testimonials, incorporate value. So it's great to post testimonials, but you always want whoever reads your post ideally to be able to come away with something that can help them that, them just reading that you did good work for somebody doesn't really help them. It can help you a little. I'm not saying never to do it, but I think there are ways to do that are more clever and more effective. And I'm going to give you some of those here. So I think that everything you want to teach or share in a piece of content can include subtle references to your clients or client experiences. Literally everything if you want to. You could produce crazy valuable content and have it always reference a client you've worked with in some way. So here are 5 ways to reference clients in your content that isn't specifically about clients. And I'm going to give you some phrases that you can use in just about any post you would want. The first one is if you're going to share a piece of advice, tell people how to do something. All you have to do is before you do that, just say, a client asked me, blah, 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 blah. I worked with so and so and they asked me this, or even if it's anonymous, right? A fast food restaurant I was working with asked me this. And then you share whatever you want to do. It's just subtle references to, oh, she works with them. Oh, she works with clients. Oh, whatever. A different version of that would be on a coaching call the other day. I told someone how to blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? Now they know you do coaching calls, right? Subtle promotion. The second thing you could do is I told a client to do this and here's what happened. So you're telling their story. Your piece of advice might be you need to change this on your website. But instead of just saying, change this on your website, blah, 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 you go, I told a client to change this on their website and then they did. And then this happened. Still valuable, still teaching, but still incorporating client references. The third phrase you could use is, I'm amazed how many clients tell me they never thought about whatever. Again, you're just working in these references. What does that do? Subtly, it's, oh, she works with a lot of clients. She works with clients all the time. Even though you're just sharing a perspective and observation or whatever, you're packaging it, you're wrapping your content in this idea of like clients and work and real world work that you've done. The fourth one, something I've noticed among my clients. So you might just have an opinion, and instead of just doing the regular opinion post, again, you package it. Something I've noticed about my clients, something I've noticed about government websites, something I've noticed
Mhm.
about whatever, or the government websites that I work with, that kind of thing. You just want everyone to always know that like they can hire you. And then the last one, let's say it's some surprising or shocking thing. My client never imagined this. Just another way to package. You can say whatever you want
Yeah.
in that. So those are by no means the only phrases, but those are 5 examples of ways you can reference clients in content, either specific clients or just generally talking about clients. And it's just a way to make sure that people understand you are coming at this from real world experience and you're busy and you're working with people and you're not just a quote unquote thought leader randomly spouting off whatever. And
That
by
you're
the way,
just
with
doing
any
to
of
do it.
those, because you've referenced clients, it's very easy at the bottom to then have a call to action and be like, hey, if you'd like to work with me and you'd like to whatever, I work with people all the time, blah, 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 that kind of. So that's one thing you can do. And then another thing, you can let your, getting a little more creative here, let your clients create content for you. So what I mean by this is I had referenced before, every email exchange you have could potentially be cut and pasted into content. So not just what you say to them, but at times what they say to you or the question that they ask you.
Okay.
Email exchange is an example of that. Snippets of recorded calls. If you record calls, maybe you transcribe them into content, or maybe even I could do a coaching call, record it, and say to someone, hey, that little bit of conversation that we had, could I put that on my YouTube channel? Could I, like they may say no, but in a lot of cases, they'll say yes. And along those lines, you can ask them to tell you about their experience or results in exchange for promoting them on your platform. So you might go, hey, tell me about what it was like after we did the work together. And if you do, I'll share your story on LinkedIn, which is going to introduce you to all my people because there can be a benefit for them as well, depending on what they do and who they want to reach and all that kind of stuff. But those things are happening and you're doing them all the time. And again, in some cases, they can be creating content for you without even realizing that they're creating content for you.
Awesome.
And then 2 more like kind of book recommendations or examples. So you can write like long form narrative case studies. And I'm not going to dive too deep into this because there's examples. There's a great book called Case Studies That Close Sales that is literally a step by step. Here's how to go interview your clients and turn their story into a compelling and valuable piece of content that is essentially a case study, but can function as a piece of content and get you business. So that book's really good. I recommend it. And there are examples of, I don't think that's who did it, but Justin Moore wrote a book called The Sponsor Magnet, which is great. It's all about how to get sponsorships. But at the end of that book, he shares some case studies that are what I'm talking about, these long form narrative people telling the sort of story of their business. And then they found Justin and how he helped them and whatever. And then they did this and it changed everything and blah, blah, blah. Long form case studies as content, which is another interesting way to incorporate clients into your content. And the last thing I have for you on this part, an AI prompt, because everybody loves AI prompts. So here it is, really simple one. I'm going to use LinkedIn as an example, but you pick your own platform, whatever you're going to do. So here's the prompt. You say, here's a LinkedIn post I plan to publish and a testimonial from a client I've worked with. Show me a way to incorporate the testimonial into the post in a subtle, natural way. You don't have to use the full testimonial. It can just be an excerpt. I would like it to be a direct quote from the testimonial and reference the name of the client who said it in the post. It will spit back at you a subtle reference to, you just give them the draft of whatever post you're going to publish. You give them a testimonial and you say, work this in a subtle way. And boom, I tried it a couple times. I was like, that's pretty good. Really simple. So even if you don't want to
Mm.
figure it out, people I know
Yeah.
all the time collect all these testimonials and then they're like, what do I do with them other than like slap them at the bottom of the page? Like, why not incorporate them into your content? Any
I
questions
love
about
this.
any of that?
No, but that actually is also a double tip for one of my clients who is paying me to help manage their like Facebook. And I'm like, you have 375-star reviews on
Yeah.
Google. We should leverage this.
Yep.
But my idea was like screenshot. I don't know.
Hmm?
But no, this is even better. So screenshot, yes, but also incorporate like here's how we serve people like this and like double dip on the comment. This is
Yeah,
great.
exactly. Cool. So before we get to your last question, I've got two bonus recommendations for everyone that's listening or watching. If you're finding this episode helpful, here are two previous episodes I published that you'll love. In April 2025, I published an episode titled People Like Your Content, Now What? That will show you what to do when you publish stuff people actually find valuable. For example, at the 2-minute mark, I reveal the two most important questions to ask yourself about your content. And at the 19-minute mark, you'll learn 5 ways to clarify who your content is for. The second episode you may want to go back and check out was published in June of 2024 and is titled How to Write a Daily Newsletter That Grows Your Business. At the 27-minute mark, I share 7 things I did to grow my newsletter to 30,000 subscribers. And at the 42-minute mark, I explain the 5 elements every newsletter needs. Links to both of those episodes can be found in the show notes for this episode. And on a side note, that is how you repurpose old content into new content. Oh, I'm doing an episode about content. Why don't I tell people about my other episodes of
Yeah.
content? Because they're not going to go find them, but now they will, and we'll look at them and we go
And the
on.
links are going to be in the description.
Right.
Why would you not roll
Right.
right into that?
And on it goes. Okay, let's get to your last
Josh, I don't
question.
think I'm paying you enough money. I think that's what we're figuring out right this second. I'm like, you are really
Perfect.
good at this.
Thank you. Let's see if I can keep my streak going. What is the third question you have? What's the last thing you want to know?
Oh, the third question, I really genuinely hope you can help me with this. I feel like I'm running into, and maybe it's a perception issue. So the question is, how do I get more people as excited about having an accessible website as I am? And I recognize that my background and my domain knowledge is all about user experience and accessibility and making sure people are included. And what I think I'm running into sometimes is with business owner and just people in general, when they think of someone disabled, when I sometimes do a thought exercise with them, they're picturing someone like Stephen Hawking, like
Mhm.
profoundly disabled, and not like me wearing my accessibility devices on my face. And the fact that, older people start losing vision and hearing and cognition and maybe physical ability. And it's all very subtle disabilities. So, like, how do I help people understand? And this may just be an empathy building
Mhm.
problem. How do I help them understand, like, hey, we're doing this because we're going to be old and have disabilities
Right.
one day, and we should make this all accessible for ourselves in the future.
So it's this is funny because you're asking me like such a you're coming from such an empathetic, loving, wonderful place, and I'm going to immediately stab you and then build
Do it.
and then build you back up. So
I'll take it.
essentially, how do you get someone excited about accessible websites? But really, how do you get someone excited about what you're excited about? And
Yeah.
the first thing I'm going to say is that's the wrong goal.
Okay.
So what I
I'll
mean
take
by
it.
that is what you need to remember is they don't need to be excited about it. They need to understand how it can help them get what they're already excited about. So
More business, more money.
these are two different things. Well, yeah, more business, more money, but it also in some cases might be, yeah, they want to serve people. They want to do the right thing. It doesn't have to just be business and money, right? It can be that they do care. They just haven't made that connection. There are people who I'm sure are like, I don't really care about an accessible website. It's not a priority, but I really believe in helping people and like they're genuinely good people, right? It's not just like, oh, I want more money.
Yeah.
But what you have to understand is you don't want to set out to convince people to care about what you care about. You want to set out to help people understand that what you care about is what they care about.
That's a really good
It's
distinction,
very
but there's a
subtle.
subtle difference. Yeah.
And so let me explain that a little more. Here's another way that I was thinking about it. Your job is to connect what you offer to what they want, not to convince them to want what you offer.
Mm,
If you can connect what you offer to what they want, you don't have to convince them.
yeah, they've convinced themselves.
And you can. And I think people get bogged down on the specifics of, I want them to, in your case, I want them to care about accessible websites. No, I just want them to see that an accessible website can help it. Like what you want is them to have your end goal is not actually to get them excited about an accessible website. It's for them to have an accessible website.
Whether or not
So,
they work with me, I just want them to have an accessible
right.
website.
So that's the end goal, right? The excitement level, like you think that the excitement level will help get them to have an accessible website. But if someone came to you and was like, Maigen, I'm never going to be excited about an accessible website, but I would like to have one.
Yeah.
You'd be like, awesome. That like mission
Great.
accomplished.
We're both
Mission,
winning.
mission accomplished. So that said, I do think there are things you can do to sort of increase their level of excitement besides talking their language and positioning it in a way that they're going to like. So the first is you got to remember that excitement is contagious and they won't be excited unless they see you excited. And obviously you're excited about this, but there are a lot of people who I talk to and you see it, especially in their content and their sales, whatever, where it's like, whether it's insecurity, whether it's like they don't like their job, whether it's whatever it is, a lot of times you're like, you don't even seem excited. This is not your problem, clearly. But a lot of times you're like, you don't even seem excited about this. So you're not excited to sell it? Why is someone going to be excited to buy it?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. Like if you want someone to be excited about whatever you're offering, you better be excited about it and not insecure and all that other stuff. Ironically, excitement or passion about an obscure topic, and not that accessible websites is an obscure topic, but maybe doesn't
Medium.
seem as exciting as exciting to some people. But ironically, people that are really excited about, passionate about stuff that is slightly obscure, non-obvious or whatever, can even be more attention grabbing because they're like, what? This person is way, if they sense that, they're kind of like, it does create some curiosity, right? What does that person know about this thing that I don't know that they're like that fired up about it? There is some sort of contagious nature to it. Let me ask you just quickly, what excites you about accessible website? What would you say are this is a good exercise for everyone, by the way, not just what excites you, but if I said to you, like, what are the three biggest reasons accessible websites excite you? What would you say?
Because you can make more money if your website is more accessible, because you can help more people either buy your product or with your service or whatever it is you do. And because it makes the world a better place, which is a
Mhm.
very Pollyanna answer, but
Still
like
valid.
that delights me. It's allowed.
Right.
Yes. It's because the world is actually going to be a better place. Again, regardless of whether or not they work with me, if they go,
Mhm.
oh, Maigen called me out for having bad headings, let me go
Mhm.
fix those. And then suddenly their website performs better in search engine results and their clients have better access to information. I technically had nothing to do with that, but I made the world a better
Right.
place. And that's what I'm
So
here for.
So you want to make sure, again, good exercise for everyone to do, right? What are the three reasons you're excited about the thing that you're excited about, the thing that you do? You want to make sure then that those three reasons are being communicated in your messaging and your marketing and your content and your sales materials and your everything. Make sure, and I'm pretty sure that you probably do, but I do think there are people that are like, oh, I love this thing. I'm excited about this thing for this reason. And then they don't really communicate that to anyone else. And then they wonder why people aren't excited about it.
Okay.
So don't shy away from communicating that again in content and elsewhere. And I would just ask you, like, have you shared any content explaining why this is so exciting to you? Have you
Yes.
ever written a post like, this is why I love accessible websites?
Maybe I haven't. Maybe I've
I'm
only
sure
alluded
pieces
to
of it have
it.
filtered into
Pieces,
whatever,
but
but
not
just
a
like a
full on like
straight
this
on, like,
why
this is
I got this
why.
big dopey grin. I am
Right.
excited about this. And I
Mhm.
think you should be. And also like the fourth reason is because it's easier than you think to
Yep.
meet more people's needs. And I think a lot of people think it's expensive and hard. And I'm just like, no, it's actually
Yeah.
not. And I can show you how.
And here's another way to do that. You could do this specifically or as a separate thing, but you can share what I'm going to call your love story. And basically, it's the story of you falling in love with accessible websites and why you've chosen to focus on them. So there is a version of this. It's just, here's what I love about accessible websites.
Mhm.
There's another version of this that is, this is how I fell in love with them. Because somewhere along the line, you
I
weren't
did.
born for accessible. Somewhere along the line,
No.
you came across this, something about it clicked with you. You wanted to do it. You dove deeper into it. You started blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
Literally think of it as a love story and tell
Okay.
the story of your relationship with accessible websites.
I didn't know anybody would be interested in that.
Well, here again, this goes back to the effectiveness, right? Is that post going to go viral?
No, but
Probably
the
not.
right people might see it
But
and will resonate with it.
a couple things are going to happen. The right people will see it. They're going to get a better understanding of you because it will be very personal, and which always helps. And go, oh, I want to work with her.
Yeah.
They'll see your passion. This goes to the sort of excitement is contagious part of it. And other people in your field who do feel that way may share it. Think about it this way. If you saw someone else post about falling in love with accessible websites, you would absolutely like it. You would probably comment on it,
I would
might
share
save
it.
it. You'd probably
Yeah.
share it. So that's the other
Yeah.
thing that's interesting, right? You say the thing that other people feel, but either can't or won't or haven't bothered to say, and it will likely get traction. And even the people that don't feel that, again, because you're being personal or whatever, there's a sort of like root for Maigen thing. Oh, I love that. I love this for
He's
you.
excited for that. That's not my
Right.
jam, but go
Right.
her.
But they're going to like it. They're going to engage with it. It's going to boost them. It will probably
And it's going to
do.
be the easiest thing I've written in
Right.
like a year
It will
because
probably
I
do
am
that.
actually excited about this.
Yeah. And by the way, also a piece of content that you can reuse. It might be the kind of thing that like even in a sales pitch or whatever that you give to potential clients, right? Maybe you have a PS that's, hey, by the way, like if it seems like I love accessible websites, I do. Link to story about your love story with accessible website. Differentiates you, feels all that. Does a lot of good things. Okay. So then the last thing here is that you want to remember that in order to get people excited about something, you first need to understand what excites people. And
Mhm.
there's a lot of variables here, but here are 5 reasons people will get excited about what you offer, almost no matter what you offer. So the first is they believe what you offer will help them get what they want. Everyone's
Mhm.
excited to get what they want. If they believe that, then they're going to get excited. The second is they believe they can do it, that it's feasible, that it's not that hard, that it's not for people that, people like them can get results like that or whatever, right? The more that they believe it's doable for them, the more likely they are to be excited by it. The third reason people will get excited about your offer is they believe they found buried treasure. So discovery is really powerful. I learned this thing. I know this thing. I have access to this thing that no one else knows or hardly anyone knows. That's very exciting. People like to think, oh, I'm on the inside or I have access to something that other people don't. They'll get excited if they think it's, again, a sort of a find, a discovery, if they're ahead of the curve, all that kind of stuff.
You
The
just
fourth
froze.
reason people will get excited about what you offer is they believe you understand them. If they feel heard, if they feel like you understand what their actual situation is, you're speaking their language, it's much easier for them to get excited. You'll hear people all the time be like, oh, she gets me. He gets me. They understand. And I see it all the time from buyers. I'll hear from people that were like, there's something about the way you're talking about this that feels like you're talking to me. It's
Yeah.
different than all the other advice and stuff that I get out there, right? That's them. They're excited because they feel like someone understands them, right? Someone sees them. And then the fifth reason people will get excited about what you offer is they believe it solves a problem or removes a pain, right?
Mm.
The bigger the problem, the bigger the pain they feel, the more excited they'll be when they're like, she can solve it. This can solve it. Oh my God, that's going to trigger excitement, right? So in everything you do, content messaging, marketing, sales, no matter what you're sort of offering, no matter what your topic is, you can get people excited about it if you can do these 5 things, right? If they believe you can help them get what they want, they believe they can do it, they believe they found buried treasure, they believe you understand them, or they believe what you have will solve their problem or remove their pain. Any one of those can be enough to get them super excited. If you check multiple of those boxes, they are going to love you and buy from you and do everything else. Any questions about any of that?
No, that was really, really helpful. I've got so much excitement that I don't have enough hands to do it all, but I'm really excited about all of this. It's
By the way,
actionable.
you're super excited now. And the reason you're excited is because I made you believe that I can help you get what you want. I made you believe that you can do it. I made you believe that you found some buried treasure and hidden tactics and
Yep.
strategies and all that. I made you believe that I understand you and what you want and your challenges and all that kind of stuff. And I helped you believe that I can help solve your problems and pain points. So, just like that, in a
Mhm.
very meta wrap up here, all 5 things that I just told you can help people get excited have apparently helped you get excited. So there you
In
go.
fact, have. Thank
It all
you.
works. Maigen, thanks so much for your questions. I know people are going to love this episode, and I'm sure there's people watching this that are like, I'm excited about accessible websites, or at least want one. I want, or at least want to know if my website even is accessible. Tell people where they can find you, learn from you, connect with you, all that kind
Oh
of stuff.
my gosh. Thank you. Well, if you want a quick accessibility review of your website, you can go to freewebsiteevaluation.com. I am also shocked that that was an available URL for me to purchase. You can find me Maigen, Maigen, Thomas.com. And my company is level11technology.com. So I'm available. I'm all over LinkedIn. I am very much on YouTube, and I am deeply excited about making the web more accessible for all people and helping all technologists understand a little bit more about accessibility. So this was really helpful, Josh. I really can't thank you for the opportunity. I'm super jazzed that I actually have time in my day now that I'm like I can go take action on some of these
Yeah,
tips.
there you go. All you need is 30 minutes a day. Thanks again. Thanks everyone for listening and watching. My newsletter, fortheinterested.com/subscribe. My membership, of which Maigen is a part, joshspector.com/program.
Best
Uh,
money I spend all year.
yeah, see, there you go. We should have led with that. By now, everybody's already logged off because they're like, they're doing the wrap up. I'm out of here. Anyway, thanks everyone for watching and listening. I will see you next time.
I appreciate you.